Welcome back to your weekly dose of encouragement. We are still in the beginning of 2026, and I wanted you to know whether you have already mapped out all of your goals or you have not set a single one, whether life is going great or it feels like things just have not slowed down for you at all. If you've stepped into this year with a fresh outlook or you're still carrying a lot and you're just trying to make it through, this space is for you. This is a place to be encouraged, enlightened, and empowered to become all that God is calling you to be. And if you know of someone who needs a place to feel seen, make sure to share this podcast with them. We love hearing when someone found us because a friend sent them an episode. Hello, and welcome to the Unashamedly You podcast, a space to enlighten, encourage, and empower you to go out and unashamedly be who God is calling you to be. I am your host, Jamie Herndon. I pray you hear less of me and more of Him as you listen to today's episode. Let's grow together. Today, we have a guest on that most people will know just from hearing her voice. She is an incredible singer, a songwriter. She is a visionary, a pastor's wife, homeschool mama. Literally, the lady is doing all the things. And I had the privilege of getting to meet her and hearing her live at NAYC. And I want to tell you, she is not just an incredible singer, but she is an anointed worshiper. She is a woman of God. Angie Pearson, welcome to the Unashamedly You podcast today. If you'll just take a moment, introduce yourself before we dive into our topic.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for your kind words. I really appreciate that. As you said, my name is Angie Pearson, and I'm a pastor's wife in the state of Kentucky. My husband and I have been pastoring for, it'll be 8 years in May that we've been pastoring, but I was raised in a pastor's home. So I'm familiar, with that ministry, and honestly, never wanted to be a pastor's wife because I was familiar with the demands of pastoring. But here we are because when God says, do this, you do it. I've got two beautiful girls. They are 11 and 13 years old, and I've homeschooled them from the very beginning. And that's a journey that we're really excited about. We Bible quiz. That's also something that has really added to their education. And as you said, I'm a songwriter and an apostolic artist. And God has opened up a lot of incredible opportunities for me to be able to minister, to lead worship, to speak. I've led worship at General Conference, at NAYC, and I've also spoken at some ladies' conferences. And God has just been very, very good to me. And I'm so grateful for everything that He's done.
I have an 11 and a 13-year-old daughter as
Oh,
well. So
wow.
that
Oh,
is
wow.
fun. We're like going to the same season, and I'm thinking about
Yes.
schooling them, and I'm thinking, you are, you are a good mama.
It's not been easy, but it has been very rewarding. And there are many times, and we'll probably get into this with some questions later on, but there have been many times that I've asked the Lord, are you sure you want me to do, A, B, C, and D? Because I feel like I've got enough going on already. Are you sure? But it's all about obedience. So,
It is, and that's a little bit of what we're gonna talk about. So, we've mentioned already, you do it all. You do all the things. So, how do you personally define being available to God in each season of your life? Different seasons bring different things, and God's asking you of different things during different seasons of our life. So, how do you personally
yes,
define that?
that is such a great question. And I hope I'm going to do it justice. I really think that for me, everything that I've been involved in has come down to obedience. And when God asks you to do something and you say, Lord, I'm willing, I'm available, um, we really want that to be convenient. And it's not usually convenient. We really want that to be comfortable. Often we have a vision of, oh, God might use me in this capacity because, I have this skill or I have this talent. And most definitely, He will use our skills and our talents. And I'm grateful that He does. But He always adds a level of challenge and a level of oh, I can't do this without him. And so he really pushes the boundaries of where you think you can go. And so being available to him is being willing to be uncomfortable, willing to be scared, willing to be vulnerable. That's honestly been the hardest part for me, is being vulnerable. And God has required that in every season. He's required me to step out and do something that's really vulnerable. So being available to him is an unequivocal yes. Yes, God, I'll do it. If you say it, I'll do it. Even when I'm tired, even when um, I don't feel like that's something I'm good at, even when I feel out of my depth, like on an NAYC stage or platform, it's just still a yes to the Lord, whatever. And also a confidence, not in yourself. Although, I mean, we could talk a lot about self-confidence, and there, we could flesh that out, but confidence in God. If you have confidence in God and in his ability to be your strength and weakness, that's what's going to carry you through all of these seasons of being available to God, is just confidence in his strength in your weakness. And so I hope I've answered that question sufficiently, that I think just saying, yes, Lord, whatever, and also trusting him that he's going to fill in the gaps where you don't feel like you have anything to bring to the table.
I often say that if you can do something all on your own and you don't need God's help and you're not scared
Yeah.
and you're not worried and you're not praying extra, whatever He requires something of you, a lot of
Yeah.
times it takes some extra praying, takes some extra fasting. It takes those things because we know we have to have His help. But if you can do it all on your own and you're comfortable with it, then
Right.
it's your flesh. It's not always God.
Exactly, exactly. And I remember so many times as a younger worship leader, I've done a lot of events in the Kentucky district through the years, and getting all of the logistics together and planning everything and feeling like, okay, we've got this planned, we've got things going on here, and this is going to be good. And then a wrench would get thrown in, something happens that's unexpected. And it's almost like God would say, thank you for what you prepared, but now let me shake it up a little bit. And now you really have to depend on me. And we do need to be people of preparation and excellence, but we always have to be ready to just rely on him when all of the preparation gets turned upside down. So I feel like he threw enough things turned enough things upside down early on in my ministry that it was like, okay, we just have to rely on the Lord now. We've done all that we can do, and the rest is going to have to be Him. And that's how it should be. That's absolutely how it should be.
Absolutely. I think a lot of times we can be really busy for God, busy doing things for Him and busy just keeping ourselves really, really busy. And there's a difference between being busy for God
Yeah.
and truly being led by God and being in His perfect plan, His perfect will, not just being busy.
Yes, absolutely. There is a scripture that I've sort of nailed myself to as a pastor's wife, because I think that role, more than any role, lends itself to busyness and expectations. Because a big part of it, when you're a pastor's wife, you often deal with expectations from other people of what they think you should be doing. And not all those things are bad, but there are a lot of expectations for that particular role in ministry, and not all of them are the things God wants you to be doing. So, and you can't do all of them. You can't meet all the expectations. And so it's easy to fall into the trap of, well, I'm doing the work of the Lord. I'm working for God. And yet he's over here like, I don't know what you're doing. I didn't ask you to do that. I'm not part of that. And so there's a scripture that at the beginning of pastoring kind of nailed myself to, and I have to always take myself back to and remind myself, and it's serve the Lord with gladness. And it takes me back to a heart of service. Is what I'm doing service, and is it for the Lord? And often you're serving a person, but on the other side of that, you can see the face of Jesus. Am I serving the Lord? And then, if obviously, am I doing it with the right attitude and the right heart and the right spirit? And I think there are a couple more scriptures that can help us divide that out. And one of them that I always have to remind myself is the fear of man bringeth a snare. Am I doing what I'm doing because I'm afraid of what other people will think? Am I afraid that they're not going to be pleased with me? So is my focus on pleasing God, or is it on pleasing man? Because that's a trap. That is a huge trap. The fear of man bringeth a snare. That's a trap that we can all fall into with ministry. And I'm serving other people while I'm serving God, because obviously the kingdom is about edifying and building up and encouraging one another. So I'm serving other people, but I always have to be doing it with pleasing him as my purpose, as my goal. And so if I'm just trying to please other people, then I'm probably putting myself in bondage and putting myself in a trap. And so that helps to divide that line between, in everything that I'm doing, am I just frantically running around, being busy, trying to meet expectations of other people because I'm afraid of letting them down, or because I'm afraid they're not going to think I'm a good pastored wife, or maybe I'm not a good worship leader? Or is it really I'm focused on the needs and expectations of other people instead of focused on exactly what God wants me to do? And so often, what He really wants us to do is to sit and be still with Him and commune with Him in prayer, and we can really lose that. I'm a really good Martha sometimes. I can do a whole lot of stuff, and but Mary chose the better part, and the work still has to be done. I mean, every pastor's wife reading that story, we're like, okay, but people still got to eat, like the work still has to be done. But have I sat at his feet and have I chosen the better part that will help me do the rest of it? And so it's really easy um, to be busy for God, but not really be led by Him. And I think the difference is, what's our posture and who's our face turned toward? Are we looking at other people, waiting for approval, or trying to make them satisfied, trying to please them? Or are we turning our face to Jesus and trying to please Him and satisfy Him? So I hope that answered that question.
That reminds me of Sister A.O. Holmes here at FPCNLR, just the the most faithful woman of God that I will ever know. And she used to pray a prayer, and she used to say, "I fear the Lord, not man."
Oh, that's so good. Yeah.
And she would say, she does things because I fear the Lord.
Right.
And
Right.
so I think whenever you were talking about those things, it reminded me of her saying that, because we can get busy thinking about what other people are thinking about us and
Yeah.
never even thinking about what is God saying.
Right. Right.
What is he
Absolutely.
thinking about the situation, or where is he at whenever I'm in the middle of doing this? And
Yes.
am I pleasing God?
Right.
And we can start fearing man's opinion and fearing what they're gonna say and fearing what
Yes.
they think, and not even think about the fear of the Lord.
Right. And especially in a culture of social media, because we're just constantly, grading one another with likes and shares. And, I mean, you think about it, the culture is so geared to getting the approval of others constantly. And that's such a trap. And there's so much power in sharing in a social media space. So this isn't a knock on social media. My goodness, the kingdom of God is present there. And I had a conversation this weekend talking about, where the apostles were. The apostles went to minister where the people were. Guess what? People are online. And so we need to be ministering online. But the other side of that is we can get so caught up in approval from other people that we really miss what God wants us to do, and we begin to tailor everything that we're saying toward likes or toward shares or whatever that may be, and lose the core of what God really wants us to be doing. And we have to fear God rather than man, because that fear of man is a trap that we fall into. And that's something that's always been a trap. It's not just now, it's always been a trap. And it really is wisdom for us to, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So it is wisdom for us to say, I fear God and I want to obey him and I want to please him. And that means that I'm not really worried about what everybody else thinks. I'm just going to do what the Lord has told me to do.
So good. Talking about that, can you share a time maybe when God asked you to step out in obedience? He asked something of you, but it didn't really even make sense in your own mind. Maybe the timing didn't make sense, but he said, I want you to do this. And you saw the fruits of that obeying.
Well, I feel like that's, my entire experience with recording. I was involved in music at a very young age. I grew up in a church plant, so I was, involved in ministry, before I was really ready. I guess just because you're a pastor's daughter and, my mom, put me on the piano for altar call when I was 10 years old. And it was terrible, for everybody. They were praying through probably just so I would stop playing, but, um but that was the beginning of my ministry, and so I was involved in music on a district level at a very young age, and I always had people say I was writing songs at a very young age. They were awful, and I was writing them, but I was just it was just what I did, um, and there was always an expectation from people around me, "Oh, when are you gonna record? When are you gonna record?" And actually, recorded with a Christian band years ago, and I hope that that project is not in the online space anywhere. To my knowledge, it's not. But so, I mean, I had some of these things happening, but everybody was like, "When are you going to record? When are you going to put an album?" And I made several attempts, and I always joke that, every time I really got serious about recording, um, I would get pregnant, and it was like you can only give birth to one thing at a time, so I was like, "I'm gonna put that on hold because now I'm gonna be a mother." So, it was always on my radar, but in my mind, I had a deadline. I have to record by the time I'm 40 years old. Now, I don't know where that came from. I don't know why I had that sort of marker in my head that, oh, if it's not doesn't happen by 40, it's not gonna happen. Well, I approached 40 and I'm in my 40s now, my late 40s now. And I got to that age and I thought I had a good plan worked out. And through prayer, that thing fell apart. And God was basically saying, that's not what I have for you. And so I came to the point where I was like, God, we're pastoring this church. We're pastoring a growing church. We're building a team here. We're doing this. This is enough for me. I don't need anything else. I don't have any ambition of my own. um, People say to me all the time, "Wow, all the dreams that you had for your life is finally happening." I'm like, "This is not mine. I don't have enough energy for this to be my dream. Like, I can't do this. This is obedience. This is like white knuckled obedience to God right now." But I kind of closed that out of my mind. That's not going to happen. And then I was actually 40 years old, 2020, spring of 2020, and a friend of mine called and he said, Brandon Cowden actually was the one who called me and he said, "You need to record and you need to record right now. And I don't know how you're going to pay for it, but this is the guy that you need to call and you have to do it right now." And I said, "Okay, yes, sir." And so what I felt like, and I felt like God was saying, "This is it. You have to do this." Like, it doesn't make sense, God. I can't go on tour. I'm pastoring, we're pastoring a church. I'm raising kids. I'm homeschooling. I'm pretty much stuck in Winchester, Kentucky. I am not going to be going out and promoting music and all of this kind of stuff. This doesn't make sense because that's what people are supposed to do, right? You record music, you go out, you promote it, you minister in places, you go on tour, and I don't do that. I don't have the availability in my calendar to really do that. So, I was like, "God, does it make sense?" But I felt like he said, "This is it. You have to do it now." And he provided for it in such a miraculous way. I felt like God took away all my excuses of all the reasons I couldn't do it. And so that's how I got started recording. But I would, in the years leading up to that, I say this because I feel like I have to really dial in on the part of it that was obedience. I would lay awake at night and I'm gonna cry probably talking about it, but I would lay awake at night and I would think about standing before God, not having done with the songs what I was supposed to do with them. And that conviction of I can't stand before God not having done with this what he wanted me to do with it. I have to be obedient. And so that was conviction. I felt so much conviction in the years leading up to finally doing it that I've not done what I'm supposed to do. And I just felt this holy conviction of you have to be obedient to this assignment and then just trust that God's going to do with it whatever he's going to do with it. So it didn't make sense, and honestly, it still doesn't make sense. I've never been on tour, and I don't go I keep my calendar um, very light as far as I don't usually leave my home church more than 1 weekend a month, and I'm always back for Sunday, and I'm very, strategic, I guess, in how I plan my calendar to manage the responsibilities at home, and so it doesn't make sense in a lot of ways, and yet God just keeps saying, do it. And so I'm just being obedient.
Talking about that reminded me of Brother Taylor Fish's message he preached here at, I believe it was a Mid-America conference, and it was the ministry of the worms. Have you ever heard that message that
I
he
have not heard that.
You need to go back and listen. It was phenomenal, absolutely incredible, but it's the ministry of the worms, and he's talking about when God asks you to do something, especially, through music or in a ministry way, it doesn't have to be that you're gone on tour and you're doing all these things that's promoting anything. He wants it. It's his. Let him
Yes.
promote it. Let
It,
him do it. Let him
right.
and that's exactly what's happened with your
Yes.
ministry.
And he's absolutely done that. I mean, he's opened up opportunities that I'm like, this is only God. I didn't set myself up for this. Like, I'm not even, I mean, this is just me being transparent. I'm not really that great of an artist as far as the marketing, the promotion. I have zero visual content out there right now. And God has convicted me over that. So I'm gonna do better this year. But I'm not present in that kind of headspace. And so whatever God has done with it has not been me. It has been him. And it's blown my mind. The first year I released 4 songs in 2021, and I got my Spotify Wrapped at the end of the year, and it was just this moment. I just remember getting it and just weeping and crying because my songs had been streamed in over 150 countries. And I'm like, God, I that's you. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to make that happen. And God has just been so good, and he's been faithful, and there's probably so much he's done. I think about that the first song I released, No Other God But Him, there's a line in the bridge, Jesus, your name is power. And I remember praying over that line specifically and praying that wherever it was heard, that the anointing of God would go forth and that power would go forth. And then I'm looking at the list of countries that probably don't even have very many churches, very many apostolic churches. The truth might not even be declared there publicly. And I got to exclaim and proclaim to the world that Jesus, your name is power. Like, that's incredible. And that was just purely the hand of the Lord. And I'm so thankful for that. But it made me feel like, wow, God, you have something for this little obedience that I've got to give you. You're going to do something tremendous through it. And but it's for him. Even if there's a song that doesn't go around the world, that people don't sing, it's for him. And if he's pleased, if his ears are pleased, then that's all that matters. That is all that matters.
All that matters. Name some of the songs that you have out, because some people may not know exactly what all songs that you have.
Yeah, so I have 8 songs out currently, and I'm about to release another one. I'm almost done recording it, and I'm so excited about it. So my first release was No Other God But Him, and then Hallelujah, Jesus Reigns, Who My Victory Is, and There Is No Limit. And then There Is No Limit, IBC turned around and recorded that in 2023. And then at the end of 23, I released I'll Sing About Jesus right before General Conference. And then I did it at General Conference. I almost did not do it, and I'm so thankful that I did. We added a shout tag to it in that General Conference service, and then IBC picked that up and started doing that on their chorale tour, and then they recorded that one in 2024. I also released a song in the fall of 23 called Voice of Miracles, which is one of my favorite songs I've ever written. And then in the early part of 2024, I released Sound Like Heaven and God of Our Breakthrough. So I have 8 songs out there wherever anybody listens to music, and go stream those, go share those, whatever. The song I'm about to release is called When We Call, and I'm so excited about it. Just really feel like God has something to do through this song. And when you feel the passion, I'm terrible at promoting myself. I'm awful at it. It feels very uncomfortable. And that's the vulnerability. Even my face on cover art just feels so uncomfortable. Being on a video, I hate all that. But you have to do it. It's part of it. You have to do it. And when you really believe that God has given you something to share for him, for his glory, for his kingdom, then you can push through all of those vulnerabilities and all of those insecurities and be willing to put yourself out there with 100% effort because you believe in what God has called you to do and what he's asked you to do and this assignment. And so this song, I feel just so assigned by God to release this song, and I'm really excited about it. I hope it's going to be out at least by the first part of March. That date's still up in the air a little bit because, again, I have to be obedient in the visual content part of it. And he's I'm so convicted, but he's really been working on me for that. And there's got to be some visual content that goes with this song. And so I'm like, yes, Lord, I'll be obedient. And last thing I'll say about that before we go on to the next question is um, last year in January, February, I got to be part of writing songs for the youth MSC album that came out for NAYC. And I was homeschooling my girls. We were doing our devotion one day and we were reading about Samuel the prophet. And I'm reading the passage to them. And again, I'm probably going to cry again. It said that he did not let one word fall to the ground. The word of the Lord was precious, and he did not let one word fall to the ground. And I was so convicted in that moment because I felt like, Lord, you have given me so many words. And I feel like they're just overflowing off my hands. I can't hold them and I've not been obedient with all of them. And so that experience showed up in a line on a song on that project, Speak Lord, I won't let one word fall to the ground. Speak to me now. And so that's where I am with my music. Okay, God, I don't know how you're going to pay for it. I don't know how you're going to give me the strength for it. I don't know what this is going to look like, but I won't let one word fall to the ground. It's this commitment that I'm making. Okay, God, give me the assignment. I'll do it. I'll do it.
So powerful. All of your songs are incredible. I love all of them. And I think we've done pretty much all of them at FECNLR at some point, but I'll sing about Jesus all the time.
I love it. Yeah, that one has really connected. And I wrote that one in such a different way. And that's another assignment is God has given me an assignment to share that with people through some visual content, share my testimony behind the song. And I've not done that yet, but that's on my list for this year. But writing that song, I was very intentional. It didn't just come to me like driving down the road, like a lot of songs come to me. I said, if I had one song that I wanted the entire world to hear, what would it be? And so this was the song. And so when I wrote it, I was headed into the studio. And I remember telling a friend of mine, if my producer doesn't want to record this song, I'm finding somebody who will, because this song is going to connect with people. And I know that it will and it has to get out there. So when you feel that fire from God that this song has to get out there, I love that because you know God is in it. You know that he's gonna do what he wants to do with the song. And part of my testimony that most people don't know about is that my first marriage ended in divorce, and this was in my late 20s, into the time I turned 30. And so when I was going to the studio and I wanted to be very intentional, I mean, my songs had, like I said, over 150 countries that previous year, and I was kind of feeling this sense of responsibility that if God is going to allow me to sing something that could go all over the world and to write something that people all over the world could potentially hear. I wanted to be very intentional about what I was saying. I wanted to really sing about something. I didn't want to just, oh, this song's got feels good and it's got a great groove to it or whatever. And, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those songs, but I wanted to have something that had a lot of substance to it. And so it was like, what am I going to sing about? Well, the obvious answer is I'll sing about Jesus, right? And so that was the song title. But if I'm going to sing a song about Jesus, what am I going to say? And I felt like I have to testify about what God has done for me. And so that other people know he can do it for them. And just give people hope. Give people hope. Let them feel the joy that God has brought into my life. Let them feel that. And so the first verse of that song, when I think about where I've been, oh, the pit I was living in. And I go back to when I was going through divorce. My then husband, we were youth pastors at a church in Ohio, and he came in one day and he said, I don't want to be the youth pastor anymore. I don't want to live for God anymore, and I don't want to be married to you anymore. And so my whole life just shattered, fell apart, and I thought my ministry was over. I thought the dreams for my life were over. I mean, I've lived for God my whole life. I'd never backslid. I only ever wanted this. And it just felt like everything was destroyed in one moment. And so I can see myself laying on the floor of the living room just in a puddle of tears and thinking, you know, this is not what I wanted for my life. This is not what I ever expected for my life. And what can happen? What's going to happen to me now? Where am I going to go in ministry? And there's such a stigma that's been associated with divorce. And so I really thought that all the doors would be closed for me. And that was devastating. And I felt so rejected and I felt so unloved. And so the next line of that verse, how hard he fought to love me. And I met the love of God in that season of my life, and I didn't realize I didn't know the depth of his love for me until I felt so unloved and so cast aside and so rejected, and then I learned how much God loved me. But he had to fight through all of my insecurities about myself. He had to fight through all of the objections. But God, I'm worthless. I've been cast aside. But redemption is my story. And that's the last line of that first verse. Redemption is my story. God redeemed me through that experience. And so I'll sing about his goodness. I'll sing about his mercy. And verse 2, when I look at where I am now, what? When I look at where I am now, I see how he brought me out. His grace that now defines me. And God's grace has defined my life and my ministry. And his grace that now defines me is what rewrites my story. I felt like God gave me a rewrite. He took the brokenness that I was in and he said, I'm not done with you. I'm not done with your ministry. I'm not done with what you have to say. I'm not done with what I'm going to use you to do. And so he rewrote my story. And now my husband and I just celebrated 15 years yesterday. We have two beautiful children, and we've been pastoring for almost 8 years. And my husband has his own redemption story about how God brought him out of drug addiction. And so he has an incredible testimony as well. And God is using us to preach restoration to people. And so that's why I sing about Jesus. He brought me out of my sorrow. He brought me out of my shame. He brought me out of my mourning. All of those things that I list, that's my testimony. God brought me out of all of that. And so that's the story behind I'll Sing About Jesus.
I already love that song, but I love it more
Yes,
now.
thank you. Thank you.
Love you sharing that. Oh, wow. What an incredible, incredible testimony that you have. And, we look at our situations, we look at what's going on in our lives, and we see, they see the rewrite
Yeah.
that you have. They
Right.
see that you're the
Right.
pastor's wife. They see that you have all the success in music that God has brought your way. And, they see what your songs are doing, but they don't always see where you
Exactly,
were.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, it's so easy to look at somebody. I actually got to testify about that song this weekend at a conference, and I said, "You might look at me up here now or see that I've been on a general conference platform or on an NAYC platform and like, wow, what a good life she's had, or she's got it all together." And the truth is, man, I've been through some dark times. God had to break me out of some darkness. He had to break me out of some depression, and he did it. He did it. He's good. He's faithful. He's so faithful. And he walks with you through the darkest of times. And then he rewrites your story and you just are blown away by what he does through it. So I have no list of things that I want God to do. Like, okay, God, I would like to, be here or do that or whatever. I'm like, God, you just surprise me. You're really good at this. Just do what you want to do. That's all I got.
That is exactly what I have recently told my husband, even with, the podcast and with the ministry and things. I'm like, I didn't come up with this. This wasn't my plan for this podcast to even be what it is
Right.
right now, or for it to have had the success that it has. And for God to have done what he's done through this and with this. I'm like, I quit giving him my goals and my list. My goals for 2026 are, God, you use
Yes.
me to the full capacity and give me the faith
Amen.
to walk the doors that you are going to
Amen.
open for me. Because your doors and your ways and your goals and what you have for me is so much better than what I can even think
Yeah.
or imagine. I just wanna trust you.
Yes, his dreams are better. Even the dreams that we thought, "Oh, this is perfect. If this happens," and then God shatters it, you know? And it's like, "Oh, I really thought that was gonna work out," and then he dreams something so much better than what you could have ever come up with, and you look back and you're like, "God, I didn't know what you were doing through that. I had no idea, but I see it now. I see how you laid the path out," and we can trust him. Oh, we can trust him. He's good at this. He's really good at this. And we can trust,
He
yeah, we
really
can
is.
trust him to do the right thing, to do the best thing. And even in our times of pain and our times of loss, he's still working and he's still blessing. And just, I love that for 2026, just trusting in him, just letting him do it. And again, I never had a list like, oh, I would love, I never said, oh my goodness, I put on a list. I wish IBC would record one of my songs. And they've recorded two of them now. And I've gotten to write on another one. And never, in AYC, when I got the call about that. I'm like, "Is this a real call? Is this a prank call? Is this really happening?" But it's like, "God, you're whatever you're doing, you just do your thing, and I'm just gonna be obedient to whatever you want me to do, and I just wanna be a vessel and a servant." So, he's been so good to me.
God is faithful to those that are faithful to him. I have never one time seen someone be faithful to God, faithful to his will, faithful to what he was walking with them through, even whenever it looked like nothing was
Yeah,
going their
yeah.
way. They stayed faithful to God. He will be
Yes,
faithful to you every
he
single
will.
time, every
Yes.
time. Somebody may be listening to this and they're saying, I have felt God put something on my heart strong. Maybe it's writing a song through music or through some sort of ministry or something that God is asking of them. But they're wondering, we all do this. I feel like in our flesh is God, is this you? Is this you asking me to do this or is it my flesh? So, how do you recognize when God is prompting you to do it versus it being, oh, this is what Angie
Right.
wants to do, not what
Well,
God?
I for me, the dividing place is, does it scare me to death? Because usually our flesh is not going to want to do anything that pushes us out of our comfort zone. The flesh likes to be comfortable, and we may have a little comfortable way that we want to serve God in the kingdom that we think we're good at. And but usually God's going to ask you to do something that really scares you and you feel really uncomfortable, and you have to really push yourself through it and to obedience. And so that for me is usually the the deciding factor. Is this God or is this me? Am I scared to do this? Do I need to trust the Lord for this to happen? Is he gonna have to put something in me that I don't already have? That's usually it for me. And that helps me say, okay, I think this is a God thing. And then it's also, laying awake at night thinking, if I don't do this, what how's it gonna be standing before God one day? I wanna hear him say, "Well done. Did I do the thing he wanted me to do?" And your flesh doesn't really dial into all of that necessarily. So, I think that conviction of, is this something I feel convicted about that I've got to do and be obedient to God, or I'm gonna have to answer for that? So, that's usually for me what it is, because my flesh really likes to be comfortable and not vulnerable and, stay in a very secure space, and that's usually not where God has me.
He will never have
Yes.
you comfortable. He will always have something of you that you're not comfortable with doing. And if you are extremely comfortable where you are in life right now, I would also suggest this. If you're wondering, I've done this myself, like, God, do you have a purpose for me? Like, I know that surely there's something else that I'm supposed to be doing. Surely
Yeah.
there's a way that I'm supposed to be pushing myself. And the more spiritual that you get, the more God will call you to those more uncomfortable
Yes.
places and positions
Yeah.
in life. And so if you don't feel like that you're living out a purpose and you're just wondering, start praying and asking him, God, what is your purpose for me? What do you want
Yeah.
of me? I'm willing if
Yes.
you'll give it to me. And the more you pray, the more you fast, the more you seek his face, And then whenever he starts asking it of you, you have to start saying yes. Because
Yeah.
I feel like the more I say yes, the more he starts
Absolutely,
requiring of
you're
me.
faithful in a few things, and he's gonna put you Lord over me, and, I feel like it does start with people is, somebody may be listening and they may be saying, "Well, I don't feel like God's asking me to do anything scary right now." Okay, well, just show up in your gifting, like, what is in your hand to do? What can you do? Or even something you don't feel gifted for, but you see a need, you see a need to help clean the church or do whatever needs to be done and just, "I'm gonna do this with excellence." And then when God sees that you will show up with excellence and you'll show up with faithfulness and you're willing to give your all, even in something that's not a platform ministry or not something you might enjoy, and you show up in that capacity, and He's going to trust you with more. And then He starts getting you okay, more uncomfortable and more uncomfortable. I got an opportunity to lead a youth choir and worship leading at Kentucky camp at a very young age. Um, and really, I was out of my league with it because I learned a lot through it. But the reason I got that opportunity is because when it was time to worship at camp, I was 100% in all the time. And just from wherever it was, the choir or out in the congregation or whatever was happening, I was all in with worship. And because I was faithful in that, then God opened up other opportunities.
And, talking about whenever God is asking something of you and whenever he wants more
Yeah.
from you, there are some fears that
Right,
come with
right.
that. We talked about that. So when fears try to hold you back from something that God is fully asking of you, how have you overcome them?
Just going back to obedience, which I know is like my theme word for today, but um, because we can be so afraid of especially with releasing music. I mean, feel like, I don't really care for that song or that's not so, and you wrote it. And so it's like, your child that you're releasing into the world. There's so much vulnerability with that. Because people will heavily critique songs and every song isn't for everybody. And so I'm okay with that to a certain extent, but there is so much fear and vulnerability that's tied in with that. And then I just have to go back to, okay, God, I feel like you're asking me to do this, and you've confirmed to me that this is what you want me to do. And so I'm really just wanting to please you. And so this is the path I'm taking. I feel like your hand is on it. And even if nobody else likes it, even if it doesn't connect with people, I mean, I've had a few releases where I released a song and it was like crickets, like nothing happens. But this is what's so interesting about the ministry of music in this area, in this realm, when it's going out on digital platforms. And you're not with anybody who's listening to it for the first time. Everybody's listening to it. You're not in the room. You don't know what God is doing. You don't know how he's speaking to people. And it can be a really like you long for this day of you're moving all this energy, money, time, everything into releasing a song and then you're not really present to see what God does with it. So it's kind of anticlimactic. You look forward to it, you put it out there, and then I have no idea what God's doing through it. And then maybe a few weeks later, somebody reaches out to you and be like, this song, wow, it carried me through this. And, I can't tell you how, this particular song impacted me. And so I hold those testimonies close to me. And I also trust that if I'm obedient and I push through all the fears, and even if you're on a release day and there's crickets and nobody, you're not getting any kind of encouraging feedback from anyone. Um, you still did what God wanted you to do. And God might be doing things through it that you're never going to see until you get on the other side. And then you find out, oh, he used that song and I didn't know. I wasn't there. I didn't see the room somebody was in when God blessed them through that. And so you just have faith that God's going to do with it what he wanted to do with it. And that may be big, that may be small. You may never see that. That's okay. Just the obedience is what you did, and, that's kinda how I pushed through those fears.
Obedience, I know is all that's all the Lord is
Yeah.
asking us is for us to obey. And there have been times that the Lord has spoken something to me, and I think, I do not want to do this. You know, like, I don't want to say this. I don't want to
Yeah.
do this, you know? And there is something that comes to me not too long ago when the Lord was asking something to me, he was speaking something to me. And I thought, God, is this you? Like I know it's you, but in my flesh, I don't want it to be you because I don't want to do what you're asking of me. And something come back to me so strong and it said, my sheep know my
Yeah.
voice.
Yeah.
Well, they know my voice. You know my
You
voice.
know.
You know when I'm
Yeah.
speaking to you. You know when it's me. And I thought, oh, what a comfort
Yes.
that I do. I do know your voice, Lord, and you know that I know
Yes.
your voice.
Yes.
And so whenever the Lord is speaking, a lot of times it may be scary. It may be something that we're not wanting to do. It may be a way that we're having to crucify our flesh to be able to
Oh,
get it
yeah.
done. But on the other side of that, what a privilege to know the
Yes.
voice of the Lord. Not everyone
That's so
knows it.
true.
Not everyone knows his voice and knows when he's asking something of you, but if you know the voice of the Lord and you know when he's speaking to you, you're
Yes.
his, and he's
Right.
yours, and you're having communion with him, you're talking with him, you know that it's him speaking to you, and that's a
It is.
privilege.
Oh, it is.
So looking at that instead of being scared and fearful, saying, "Oh God, you're speaking something to me, you're asking something to me, and I know
Right.
it's you. I know your
Yeah,
voice."
yeah. Oh, that's so true that it is a privilege to know the voice of the Lord. And I'm so thankful for his voice. And sometimes he speaks to me in correction and it's like, "Oh, that felt a little harsh, Lord." But I know it's from him because I know his voice. And then I'll share this. I spoke at Georgia Ladies Conference this past year in April, and it was an interesting experience. It was a wonderful experience. But the interesting part about it was that God had given me what I was going to say before he was even officially asked. I knew that I was potentially going to be asked, and they'd asked me to kind of hold a date just in case. And so, but I hadn't actually been asked officially. And then God had already told me what I was going to say. So I was like, well, I already know what I'm supposed to say. And so then I carried it for over a year, carried this assignment. And when I delivered the message, and then I remember sitting back down and I said to the Lord, I said, "Oh God, I hope that you're pleased with me." And he said, "Oh, it's tearing me up today to think about it." He said, "I was already pleased with you." And it was just like his voice was so comforting. And it just let me know, I'm not grading you right now. I'm already pleased with you. You were obedient. I'm already pleased.
Such a privilege to be able to be asked of something of the Lord. So we mentioned that you're doing all the
Yes.
things. You guys were pastoring, you're homeschooling, you're leading worship, you're writing songs, you're being a wife, you're being a mom. Everything that you do takes a lot of you. It takes a
Yes.
lot of time. I mean, just being a wife and a mom to two teenage daughters
Yes.
or preteen teen, that's hard enough. And then you're homeschooling them. And then, like you said, whenever you write the songs and you put them out there, you also have to have the time
You
for all
do.
that. There's a lot going
Yes.
on. How are you
I'm not
balancing
sure
it?
I am, honestly. It feels like there's always something that I'm not quite, getting done, okay? So, um, I won't say that I feel like I'm successfully balancing it all, but, I do feel that God has given me some focus, first of all, is that my number one focus is my family, and so sometimes that's required me to say no to other things, because I feel like my ministry as a mother right now is the most important ministry that God has given me. And it's seasonal. I'll always be a mother, but I won't always have the influence that I have on them right now. And so I keep that very close to the top of everything. And then also our local church body, that we're pastoring, I feel very much called of God to be doing what we're doing. And so I don't ever want to be pouring so much into other spaces that I'm not pouring into our local church what I need to be pouring here. And I try to measure that in prayer. God, I don't want to get my priorities out of balance. And so that's part of why I limit my schedule of where I go out of town. And so my home, my family, and then my church, those take priority. And then I feel like next it's the songs that he's given me because again, that's something I feel very convicted about doing and being obedient in. And so it's very hard, even after just those two things, just being a mom especially homeschooling your kids, being a pastor's wife, all of those. And then you're going to add something else that you feel very called of God to do. It does seem to me that sometimes it gets pushed to the back and it's hard for me to shift my focus all the time. But I'm learning to do better in that. I'm learning to do better. So I don't know if I've got quite the balance altogether, but I will say you have to have the strength of the Lord. And one thing that can't get pushed aside. And I've had seasons where it has been, and I have felt the impact of it is your time in prayer and your time in the word has to always be at the core of it because there's a source of energy and of focus that flows through that. And so there are many mornings where I'm just like, God, okay, what do you want me to focus on today? Where does my time need to be today? Where does my energy need to be today? And what needs to go? What is just fluff that needs to be cut out? And, so crazy because I mean, we know this, but when I ask him for help, he helps me. It's great. Like he just comes through. When you ask him for
Hey, dude,
strength,
he
he
shows
shows
up.
up. And so that is in my attempt to balance it, as long as I keep him first and as long as I let him be my source, then I'm able to do everything he wants me to do. It might not be everything everyone else wants me to do. And I might have to lower my own expectations for some things because sometimes it's not other people's expectations. It's my expectations are the problem. And I have to let it go and be like, what does God really want from me? And what is he going to give me the strength to do? And so I'm finding that peace. I haven't always had it, but I'm finding that peace that, okay, if this is God's thing for me to do, then he's going to help me as long as I'm staying plugged into him, as long as I'm not losing him in the process, as long as I stay plugged into him, he's going to help me stay focused, stay ordered, right? Properly ordered, and also give me the strength and the energy. And Wayne Huntley preached a sermon this weekend that I heard, and he said, to him that hath, it shall be given, right? And he talked about the person that has passion, guess what? They're going to get more passion. And I felt like that was God saying to me, you keep giving it all and I'm going to give you more to give. Like you just keep giving 100% and more at times and I'm going to show up with the next part. Okay? So, thank you Jesus.
I love that you said it's what you focus on. You find those things for the focus. And, focusing on God first. Ask and it shall be given,
Yes.
seek and you shall find. Whenever you start asking him for help,
He helps.
it's crazy. We'll ask
He
him for
does it.
so
Yeah.
many things. We ask him for this, ask him for that. Sometimes we forget to say, God, you're my
Yes.
helper. Can you help me today? Can you give me strength? And one thing that I have found lately in the season of life that I am in is I can actually do more than what my mind thinks I can do.
100%. Yes, you can.
I start looking at all these tasks and to-do lists, and I need to do this, and then that, I'm doing this that day, and then I've got this to go that night. And used to, I'd be like, oh, well, I have this tonight, so I can't do anything during the day because I'm just preparing for the night. And lately, life has hit me with a couple things where I'm like, I'm in the middle of doing something during the day, and then there's something else that's going to go on that night that I've got to get done. And it's a lot. It feels like a lot in my
Yeah.
mind, but I've thought, I'm not going to get overwhelmed. It's all going to get done. It's going to be fine. And I actually can do
Yeah.
both. I can do more than what I thought I
Right.
can do. So sometimes it's like you said, those expectations we
Yeah.
put on ourselves. What expectations are you putting on
Yeah.
yourself that's making you not be
Right.
able to do all the things
Or
that God is asking of
limitations
you?
that you put on yourself. You think there's no way I can do all of this. There's no way. And then it's like the Lord saying, well, actually, if you'll ask me for help, there is a way. There is a way you can do all
There is
this.
a way.
And I'm going to say in this, you can do too much. You have to honor rest principles and you have to take time to rest. But also, when God wants you to do things, it's going to feel like it's too much for you to do. And so you just have to honor when is He saying, hey, sit down with me, rest for a minute, commune with me, be with me right now. And our stillness praises Him sometimes. I think that's a Psalm 61, I believe it is. It says, praise waiteth for thee in Zion. But the real or the more accurate interpretation that's probably stillness praises him. Being still praises him. So there's moments to be still and he'll call you to that. And then there's moments to say, okay, we've got work to do. God's given me some things to do and he's going to give me the strength to do them. So he's so good. He's faithful.
You just walk with him essentially is what this whole podcast is summed up
Yeah,
to.
you if you do that, if you walk in the spirit, if you just walk with him, you let him satisfy you, and you have what you need. You just, what is it? Psalm 34, I think, they that fear the Lord, shall want for no good thing, or I think I'm not quoting it correct. But basically, if we fear the Lord and if we make it all about him, we have every single thing we need. And that includes the strength, the energy, the resources, the provision. I'm testifying to help myself today because God's given me so many assignments for this year. And I'm like, Lord, I don't know where the provision for this is going to be, but He's going to provide. He's going to do it. If it's His work, He's going to make it happen.
He is every time. And talking about, that sometimes he will call you to rest, and God sometimes will take things
Yeah.
away, and that's the part I don't really ever like.
No.
Whenever he pulls things from you, or he will ask you to pause or lay something down, and at the time, it might feel like, and it could be something
Yeah.
good. Lay something good down for something
Right.
better.
I had an experience that comes to mind, which so this was several years ago. I would say it was probably 2021. I can't remember the year exactly, but I'd released some music already, and I really have always wanted to be involved in like a writing community, and God has allowed me to be in some really cool writing groups and write with some people, and I feel like I'm still kind of finding my people to write with, and that's been an exciting process. But at that time, I had only ever written songs with my producer. And so I wanted to find a community of writers. I'm pretty sure this was back in late 2021. There was a songwriting event happening. And I thought, this is exactly what I want. This is what I want to do. And I registered for it, paid the registration fee. I was um I was all, scheduled to go, but it also turned out it was the same weekend as an event at our church, which I was going to drive back for, but I was going to be gone on my daughter's birthday. And I felt a little conflicted about that, but, I thought, "Well, this is such a great opportunity, and this is also what I really want to do," you know? And then, my daughter, which I wanna say she was turning maybe 8 or 9 years old, so, she's very young at the time, and she said, "Mom, I really don't want you to be gone on my birthday." And there was something about the way that she said it that it was like God reminded me, "Remember when you said that you were gonna make sure your family was always put first? Remember that." And I felt like God was kind of checking me on my motives. And so I called and canceled. I said, I'm not going to be there. And I was so excited, about the opportunity, and felt like I was letting go of the thing that I wanted, right? Because I really wanted a writing group. I wanted to write songs in groups. But just, I felt like God was saying, told me some things that you were going to commit to. And I just want to see how committed you are to that. And so I said, okay, I'm not going to go. I'm going to stay home. It's home for my daughter's birthday. And I felt such peace that I had made the right decision, that I had given up something that I wanted, but that God was going to see through. And I don't even necessarily know that I felt like, oh, he's going to reward you because you gave that up. I just felt like I need to say, hey, I committed to some things, and I want to show you, God, that I meant what I said, and I'm going to stick with this commitment. And now down the road, I've been able to write songs with all of those people who are gonna be at that event, and so, I feel like the path that I took was the path I needed to be on, and that I lack for nothing. I don't look back and say, "Oh, if only." No, I lack for nothing. God has been so good. He's let me write some songs in some really cool rooms, and, be part of some, great writing sessions, and so my life lacks nothing, and I felt like I made the right call, improving my commitment to my family first above any of this other stuff. And yeah, I felt like I did what God wanted me to do there. And then he's blessed me so much since then.
I have found, even with myself sometimes, that I'll go through something or have a choice to make, and it's like something in the back of my mind says, "You're teaching your children how to go through this when they face
Yeah.
this."
Yeah.
And that come to mind whenever you were saying, like, you showed your daughter, "I gave up something that I really wanted to go to. That meant a lot to me, but I gave it up for
Right.
family." And there's gonna be a time where she's gonna have to make
That's
that
so
same
true.
decision, and she's gonna say, "My mom gave
Yeah.
that up for
Yeah.
me, and when it was important for me, and I'm gonna do this for my
Yeah.
my own
Yeah.
children one day."
Yeah. That's absolutely true. Absolutely true. And somebody else might make a different call in that situation. I mean, somebody else, it might not be the same call, but for me, I felt like God was saying, "Hey, you told me you were going to put your family first above all the rest of this. And I want to see if you're really going to do that." So,
How has worship and songwriting been a place of surrender for you? I know just hearing the words, like you said, you're putting your baby out there. This is something that this several things. One, you're putting out there things God has given you. He's revealing things to you. He's given things to you. This comes from a place of dugout consecration. This isn't just some random, I was walking through the mall or through the neighborhood and boom, this song come up. No, it's a place of consecration, it's surrender. Otherwise, we wouldn't feel the Holy Ghost the way we feel whenever they're saying,
right.
right?
Yeah, right, right.
So you're surrendering and you're doing that. And then what has obedience cost you? And what has it given you through being able to put yourself out there and showing this place of surrender to everyone, really?
I think our will is the biggest thing that we have to surrender to God. And also the things that we would go after that we think are going to satisfy us. When we really find a place in worship to God, we realize that He's the only thing that satisfies. He's the only thing that truly satisfies. And so those moments I feel like have been the most powerful moments that God has has flowed through are those moments where you truly surrender to him and you say, "Not my will, yours be done. Not what I want, but God, what you want." And there is a cost that comes with that though. And I'm in a season of my life where um, I'm realizing it more and more is that when God opens up opportunities for you to minister on whatever scale, every yes that you say is a no to something else. And sometimes it's a no to things that you might really enjoy doing. I look at my calendar for this year and it's pretty full already. And there has been a part of me, and this is just me being transparent, and I think somebody's going to get it that's listening. There's a part of me that's like, "Oh my goodness, we could do so many fun things on all these weekends." But I've filled up my calendar and I feel like it's been a God directed thing, but it is a sacrifice to be used by God when you get to go places and to speak to people or to lead worship and God is using you in tremendous ways. You are still saying no to something else. And a lot of times what we're saying no to is maybe just, being comfortable and going out and having fun or, something that's not necessarily bad, but it's not what God has for you to do. And I think anybody listening to this who stays um, who stays pretty booked up with things to do will get it that you do say no to a lot of things when you say yes to God, but it's worth it. There's an eternal reward, and there's a reward that comes even through giving. And so obedience for me has been exhausting. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, as the expression is, that goes into recording, that goes into leading worship at events, that goes into just pouring into people on a level of pastoring, where you're discipling people and you're counseling and you're ministering and you're showing up in people's hard moments. That obedience is very costly and it's still worth the price to be paid. So, yeah, it's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of saying no to yourself and a lot of just getting up and doing what has to be done. And yet, thank God for it. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be obedient.
I think about too, you had said, whenever you stand before God, there's only a certain season of your life that you can do
Yeah.
certain things. So, like, you can't wait until your children are grown and then, you're in your 60s and 70s going out and recording.
Right, right, right,
No, it's like there's a season of busyness and the season that God is calling you to, but you can't wait and sit on a
right.
season that God is asking something of you. There are things that God has asked of me to do, and it may just be simply volunteering at the at Calvary Academy, our kids' school, Matt will say, like, "Well, you're making yourself busy with that." I'm like, "I feel
Yeah,
compelled to
yeah,
help in that area, and I feel a burden to do that. That's on my heart. It's what I want to do because I
yeah,
feel it. I feel it. I need to begin to do that. But I can't wait until my kids are completely graduated out of school and then try to come back and do
right.
all these things whenever I have more free time. It's like, no, I have to do it now in this season that I'm in. It's this, and while I'm feeling this burden and while I'm feeling this to do it, but like you said, it can cost you some
Yes, it
things.
can, and there's a word I didn't say when I was answering that question that really I think needs to be said is that it's not gonna be convenient. God's will for us is rarely something that's convenient, and we really like convenience, I mean, DoorDash and fast food and all the Amazon and all the things that are just so convenient. They show up when we want them to, all of that, and God's will for us is probably not going to be convenient. And so it is going to cost us something and require us to give more and maybe sacrifice some things that would be more convenient, but also our girls are the same ages. We're teaching our children how to serve in the kingdom, and in a lot of capacities we serve with our children pastoring, and but we're teaching them how to say yes to God, hopefully with the right priorities. And that's something that God sorts us out through prayer. And that he'll sort us out in prayer. If we're open to him in prayer, he will sort us out if we get our motives twisted or if we get our priorities wrong. He's going to reorder us in prayer, realign us to purpose, realign us for what he wants. But I don't believe that it was ever God's intention for his church to just sit around and be comfortable and only serve in convenience. I think that he was expecting us to give a full measure. And by the time I'm at the end, I want to have given a full measure to him. I want it, whatever I could give, I want to have given that.
I think there's a lot to be said of people that don't mind being inconvenienced for
Yes.
God.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can do it begrudgingly and we can say, well, I feel like, or they've asked me to do this, so here I
Yes.
am.
Right.
One, your kids see it and hear it. Two, God
Yeah.
sees it and he
Yeah.
knows what kind of heart you had whenever you were
Right.
doing it in. And it's like, how are you serving him? How are you? But there's something to be said about someone that does not mind God wrecking their schedule, does not mind God
Right.
inconveniencing them and saying, God, this might be so called inconvenient for me, but I want to be of service to you. I want to be available
Yes,
to you
absolutely. And being a servant of God is going to require a lot of inconvenience. It will. It will. Yeah.
a lot. What would you say to someone who they feel like God's nudging them, but they're feeling overwhelmed or maybe just underqualified?
I would say if God has it for you to do, then he's going to give you what you need. And if you feel, overwhelmed, if you feel unqualified, that probably means God's asking for you to do it, because he tends to pick the people who don't feel ready, right? If we waited until we felt like, oh, I'm skilled enough now, or I'm ready for this, I'm prepared enough. Well, we're probably not focused on the right thing, because his assignment is going to feel pretty big and pretty overwhelming. I would say that pray for God to give you a clear next step. What is my next step that I need to do? He rarely lays out like a 5-year plan, okay? Because that's not walking by faith. But I have found that when I pray, okay, God, you've given me something to do, I don't even know where to start. And I feel so out of my depth with what you're wanting me to do. What's the next step I need to do? Give me just a small next step to do it. And then when you do that step, then he usually gives you the next step and then the next step. And so you have a path forward, because sometimes it can feel overwhelming and that I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with this. Okay, God, give me something to do. What is the next thing that I can do with this? All right, that's what I'll do. I'll be obedient in that. And that helps me in those moments where I'm like, I just clueless. Okay, you want me to do visual content? I don't know what to do. What's my next step? And then he gives you the next step, and it's going to be uncomfortable, but then he'll give you the next step. So I think that's probably something that I hope's helpful for someone who hears.
My husband often says that it says, God's word is a lamp unto thy
Yeah.
feet and a light unto thy path. And so it's a lamp unto thy feet. Well, putting a lamp in front of your feet and it's a light into my path. A path just is always something. It's short, small,
Yeah.
it's narrow. The path is not, we want it to be like, God, give me a spotlight up on my
Right.
future,
Or
you know?
we
I want
want
to
a
know
GPS,
everything
like
you're doing.
we want turn by turn directions, and we want it all laid out in front of us so we can see exactly where we're going, and he's like, "No, I'm gonna give you one instruction at a time, and you
Step
just
by
be
step.
obedient with that."
And it feels overwhelming because we wanna see the end picture. We don't wanna do, always do the step by step, but he's like, "No, if you saw the end result, you would really be
Yes.
overwhelmed. You need to just do
Right.
this next step and watch me lead you and
Absolutely.
guide you along the way."
Absolutely.
Everything that you have said today, you have spoken a word to all of us here in the Unashamedly You community and on this podcast. It has been absolutely incredible. I know that I feel motivated. I
Praise
feel
God.
inspired to do all that God is asking of me. And I know everyone listening is feeling the same way. What is one last thing that you would want to leave with the Unashamedly You community
I
today?
would say that this is coming from a story I heard this weekend. I heard this story about, Brother Billy Cole, and I'm probably gonna I may not get all the details right, so, whoever knows all the details, please forgive me if I don't get all the details right, but the gist of what he said was, he was nearing his last days, and he had a conversation with God, I think through a vision or a dream, and in that conversation, he said, "God, I've tried to be like the apostles, and I've tried to do everything that they did, and, I've tried to be obedient and all the good stuff, right?" And then the Lord said to him, "It would have been better if you had tried to be like me." And I think that we can try sometimes to be like other people. And I hope that I've been able to say something that's inspiring and encouraging and motivating today. But the best person that we can be is just try to be like Jesus. And when we're going to be like Jesus, it's so great the way he does it because he's created us all differently. We're going to shine differently than somebody else. Even though we're all trying to be like him, that light is going to shine through each of us differently. And so, the name of your podcast, Unashamedly You, you're gonna look different than me as far as what you're doing and what you're accomplishing. We're not all gonna be carbon copies of each other in our ministry, in our impact, in our message, but God's gonna shine through each of us with our skills, with our talents, with what He's given us to do, the assignments that He's handed to us. And if we just try to be like Jesus, if we just try to be like Jesus, then he's going to accomplish his will through each one of us.
He is the author and the
Yes.
finisher.
Amen.
We can count on him to do it all, and I'm so grateful that we can. Thank you for the encouragement that you gave all of us. You've inspired us to be more like Jesus today, and I'm grateful for that, not just through your music and through your songs, but also through the ministry of speaking into our lives. Thank you for being on the podcast
Thank
today.
you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to another episode on the Unashamedly You podcast. And if this episode has helped or encouraged you in any way, we would be delighted if you would leave us a review over on Apple or Spotify or wherever you are listening from. This will help others to see our podcast and know more of what our content is about. We appreciate every share, every review, and knowing that this podcast is a blessing to you is a blessing to us. Thank you for spending your time listening. Go be unashamedly you.